Hi, I'm Sue Jackson, the author of Finding a New Normal, Living Your Best Life with Chronic Illness. My book is about any kind of chronic illness and about just ways to improve your life, even when you're living a life that's defined by limitations. But today's topic is actually specific to several different kinds of diseases. Today, I'll be talking about correcting sleep dysfunction in MECFS, and this is also relevant to long COVID and to many fibromyalgia patients as well, just based on the studies that have been done. So what I'm talking about here is not sedatives to knock you out or kind of the basic sleep hygiene advice that you hear all over the place. I will mention some of that later on, but the primary focus here is on what's behind the sleep dysfunction in MECFS, long COVID, and fibro. Why we don't sleep well, why we wake up still feeling exhausted, and how to actually correct that, get to the root causes and fix it so that your sleep is natural and feels normal, it's refreshing. So the basis for today's video is an article that I first wrote for the Pro Health website. It was published in 2019, September 2019, on Pro Health. It resided on the website for several years. I have updated the article and just recently published it on my own blog, Live with MECFS. You can see there's the republished article there. It is pretty much what was published on Pro Health, which means it also includes at the end scientific references. So this is a great article for sharing with doctors because it's all based on scientific research, medical evidence, and if they want to know more, the references are there. So let's dive in. I'm going to do something a little different than my usual videos. I am going to read much of this article directly to you, but I will explain as I go along. And that way, because I don't want to miss any important information. Sleep problems are one of the most common problems in MECFS, which is myalgic encephalomyelitis or chronic fatigue syndrome. Sleep dysfunction is a critical piece of the very complex puzzle that is MECFS. MECFS and long COVID patients are eager for treatments that will help to improve and normalize their sleep because it's one of the most destructive aspects of this illness. When I was first diagnosed with MECFS by my wonderful primary care physician, I just sort of stumbled on her at the time, 20 years ago, but I got lucky. She was one of the few doctors in my region that actually knew about MECFS, knew how to diagnose this, and knew how to treat it. So when she first diagnosed me, the first thing she said to me was, "Are you ready to try some treatments?" And I was like, yes. This was after a year of suffering. And she said, the first thing we have to do is fix your sleep because that affects everything else. And correcting the sleep issues are going to help improve everything. And she was right. So here are treatments that can help you fall asleep faster, sleep more deeply, and wake up feeling refreshed. So in order to understand what's wrong with the sleep in MECFS, we have to first look at what normal sleep looks like. So a night of refreshing sleep consists of multiple sleep cycles. And during the night, someone who's getting normal, restful sleep will cycle through these different sleep cycles in a very predictable pattern. So you start in stage 1 and then move into stage 2 sleep. And those are both light stages of sleep. Then comes stage 3 and stage 4 sleep, which are the deeper stages of sleep where your body does a lot of its repair and restoration work. And then comes REM, or rapid eye movement sleep. That's the stage where we dream. Those deep stages 3 and 4 are especially important for immune health, for endocrine, hormonal function, and energy. It's when our bodies recover and rebuild. A healthy endocrine system, which produces hormones in the right amounts at the right times throughout our bodies, helps to regulate sleep and everything else. Literally everything in our bodies is regulated by hormones. That's the endocrine system. And sleep is no different. In healthy sleep, these hormones will be involved in a particular order and in a particular way. First, a hormone called tryptophan is converted into 5-hydroxytryptophan, or 5-HTP. It does this with the help of vitamins and minerals, particularly iron, magnesium, calcium, B6, and folic acid. You may have heard of tryptophan before. It got kind of famous in discussions around Thanksgiving dinner because there's a lot of tryptophan in turkey, and it's what makes you sleepy after a heavy protein-rich meal. But that's just the beginning. 5-HTP is then converted into serotonin, which has many important functions in the body. This conversion occurs with the help of magnesium again, zinc, vitamin B6, and vitamin C. So serotonin has many different functions in the body, including regulating mood and ensuring good sleep quality by converting into melatonin. So melatonin, now we're at the bottom of that conversion cycle of hormones, and melatonin directly regulates sleep and wakefulness. A healthy body will just normally make more melatonin at night as it gets dark out, and then less during the day as it gets light out. And we'll talk a little more about that later. So melatonin and cortisol, which is another hormone, very important in MECFS, those two work together to regulate sleeping and wakefulness. They're like the yin and yang of sleep and wakefulness. So in a healthy body, daylight triggers the body to stop producing melatonin and start producing more cortisol. Throughout the day, so cortisol should be at a high at the beginning of the day. Throughout the day, cortisol gradually declines, and darkness, again, this is all triggered by the environment. Darkness should trigger the body to start making melatonin again and to stop producing cortisol, or to produce much less of it. So many, many scientific studies have shown that in MECFS and long COVID, possibly fibromyalgia, I'm not as familiar with that. Studies have shown that MECFS and long COVID patients have low cortisol levels all the time. So this is why we don't have energy during the day. It's one of many reasons why. Our bodies are not producing cortisol during the day, and correspondingly, they're not producing enough melatonin at night. We're not getting that, which should be a normal melatonin cortisol cycle. Luckily, the reverse is also true. As my doctor indicated, when you correct sleep, you will also be helping to normalize cortisol, which is critical and is a very important aspect of MECFS and long COVID, that low cortisol. Okay, so that's what normal sleep should look like and what normal hormonal changes should look like. So what's happening in MECFS? Why do MECFS patients feel like we're half awake all night long and still exhausted when we wake up in the morning? So this is where things get tricky. Many traditional sleep studies were done on MECFS patients, comparing us to healthy controls. They often do not find measurable differences in the sleep cycle. A few studies have shown reduced total sleep time and reduced sleep efficiency. However, newer studies using entirely different ways of measuring sleep are finding that MECFS patients have more disruptions in REM sleep, that's the stage where you dream, and in deep stage 3 and 4 sleep. Our brains will sometimes jump right from REM sleep or even deep stage sleep into stage 1, light stage 1 sleep, or even being awake. We're jumping out of those deep stages of sleep into wakefulness, instead of cycling through one stage at a time the way our bodies are supposed to. To me, this explained so much about what I was feeling and what it felt like was happening. These REM disruptions in the studies correlated with worse symptoms the next day. So the hormone side is also not entirely clear. The few studies of serotonin levels in MECFS patients have shown contradictory results, though some do show abnormal serotonin function. So, in other words, a single lab test might show a normal level of serotonin, but there are some studies showing abnormal function, indicating that our bodies aren't controlling serotonin in the way that a healthy body should. And this is a lot of the endocrine dysfunction in MECFS comes down to that our bodies might release levels of certain hormones, but they're not being released at the right times or in the right amounts, and our bodies aren't necessarily able to clear those hormones as they should be cleared. All of this matters because sleep deprivation causes a multitude of serious health problems, even in someone who is otherwise healthy. So it worsens every aspect of MECFS. My doctor was right all those years ago. Fixing sleep does help fix everything else. So let's talk just briefly about sleep studies. When an MECFS patient mentions that they're having trouble sleeping, doctors will typically send them for a sleep study. This is what they would do for a normal patient. The problem is, as I just explained, that a normal sleep study in a normal sleep lab will often not show exactly the problems we're having, and certainly not the extent of the problems. If even carefully controlled scientific studies using typical sleep measurement techniques aren't showing our problems, then they're not going to show up on one night in a sleep lab. However, sleep studies do have an important function and something that may impact many of us. They are designed to diagnose primary sleep disorders, things like sleep apnea, restless leg syndrome, narcolepsy, and it is possible, even if you do have MECFS, that you could also have a primary sleep disorder. There may even be a small portion of MECFS patients who have been misdiagnosed and actually have narcolepsy or sleep apnea. Some studies even indicate that MECFS patients have a greater risk of primary sleep disorders. So it's important to diagnose and treat those, or at least rule them out. Consider a sleep study for that purpose, to diagnose or rule out primary sleep disorders. but don't expect it to find much in relation to your MECFS sleep dysfunction. And make sure that your doctor understands that, perhaps by sharing this article. I will link down below to this newly updated article on my blog. And right at the beginning, there's a link to a copy of my original article as it appeared in Pro Health. And that would be a great thing to share with your doctor because, this is coming from a blog. Doctors may roll their eyes at that, but it was officially published. It does include scientific references. So I would print that version of it, which is linked below, and share that with your doctor. Okay, so aside from treating primary sleep disorders, how do you treat MECFS sleep dysfunction? So the key to correcting our sleep dysfunction at its source is to target those hormones that are responsible for good quality sleep. This is different than taking a sedative to just knock you out. It actually means correcting the problem so that your sleep feels natural and normal and you wake up feeling refreshed. There are a lot of different approaches to try, and I'm going to go through some of the most common ones, but there are even others beyond this. There are so many different things to try, and I'm emphasizing this because so often I hear a patient say, with respect to correcting sleep dysfunction or treating orthostatic intolerance or other aspects of our illness, patients so often say, oh, my doctor tried treating that and it didn't work. And if I dig deeper, I find out, they only tried one treatment at one dose, and we are all very different people, even within MECFS. There's a lot of variety in our symptoms and our illnesses. Some of us are far more severe than others. And it's really important to use trial and error to find what works for you. And it's going to be different for different people. So you have to work with a doctor to find the right treatment or combination of treatments. And you also have to be cautious not to raise serotonin too much because that could cause other problems. Okay, so first off, we can start, I'll show you that hormone cascade one more time. So first off, we can start with what directly affects sleep, and that's melatonin. So you can directly supplement with melatonin. It's sold over the counter. It's readily available in any drugstore, pharmacy, grocery store, online. And if you're supplementing with melatonin, you would take that at bedtime. So most people end up using 3 to 5 milligrams of melatonin. But again, it's important to find what works for you. With all of these treatments, you should always start with the lowest dose, move up if you need more, and gradually see what is going to work best for you. This is 1 milligram melatonin, and I'm going to talk more about the type in a moment. So you can start with 1 milligram, go up as high as 8 to 10. Sometimes my son even takes a little more than that, like 12 milligrams. Most patients do find melatonin helpful, but that it doesn't fully correct their sleep dysfunction. That's where some of these other treatments are going to come in. The other thing to notice is that regular melatonin, including most varieties that you will find on the shelves, your body metabolizes it immediately. And so it will help you fall asleep faster, but it may wear off and not help you stay asleep. What we use is extended release, or this is called time release melatonin. This brand, Natural, is a very respectable brand. Doesn't have anything in it that you don't want. And they make some of the regular quick release melatonin that's absorbed immediately. But the extended release, because it will stay in your body longer, it will help you both fall asleep and stay asleep. So definitely recommend that. And I'll include some links below. Oh, I also meant to point out that was available over the counter. Some of the rest of these are prescription. However, typically your own primary care physician or general practitioner can usually help you with correcting sleep dysfunction, because most of the medications used are very old medications that all doctors are familiar with. They've been proven very safe and effective over decades, and we're actually using them at lower doses than they are normally used in. So most doctors will be able to help you with this. So the next thing that you might want to try is tricyclic antidepressants, or TCAs. Most antidepressants work by affecting levels of serotonin. And as we saw, serotonin is very important in the sleep cycle. This class of TCAs, tricyclic antidepressants, increase serotonin like many other antidepressants. They help because they are particularly sedating for most people, especially two of them, which are commonly used for sleep dysfunction: amitriptyline and nortriptyline. I'll tell you a little bit about my own experiences in a moment. TCAs also increase epinephrine, another hormone which affects your pain threshold. So these can also be helpful if you have chronic pain. That makes them useful for fibromyalgia in particular. As I mentioned, we use a lower dose for correcting sleep dysfunction than you would normally use for depression. So make sure that your doctor understands this. So for treating depression, TCAs might be prescribed throughout the day with, I don't even know what the dosing is. I know it's much higher. For us, if you're using it to correct sleep dysfunction, you will only be taking it one time a day, about 30 minutes to 2 hours before bedtime. And you can experiment and see how you react to it when it works best for you. I take mine about 30 minutes before bedtime because lower doses are generally what we need for correcting sleep dysfunction. Nortriptyline can be a particularly good one to start with because you can get it in a liquid form. And both my son and I started out that way. So you can start with teeny tiny doses, go up in tiny increments. And this is very helpful if you're one of those people who tends to overreact to medications. If you are one of those people, the other thing you want to look into is improving methylation. That's why you're overreacting to medications. I'll include a link down below. That's a whole different topic. So one study of MECFS patients showed that taking 60 milligrams of nortriptyline at bedtime showed improved symptoms. So I would start lower than that, but that gives you an idea of what a typical dose might end up being. So I think I'm going to insert my experiences here, our experiences of my son and I, while we're on the subject. So nortriptyline, I did start out trying amitriptyline. I tried it at 10 milligrams, which is a very small dose, and it left me feeling groggy in the morning. Amitriptyline does have a tendency to stay in the body a little longer. And this is what I mean by trial and error. My doctor asked how I was doing. I said, well, I think I'm sleeping better, but I'm so groggy in the morning and I'm having trouble waking up. So she said, okay, that one's too sedating for you. Let's try nortriptyline. And that's when I started out with a liquid so that we could start out with tiny doses. I don't even remember what dose I started with. It was probably like 5 or 10 milligrams. In the liquid form, it's very easy to take a tiny amount. I know that over months, maybe even over like the next year, I very gradually increased my dose of that. When I got to about 50 milligrams, that seemed to work well for me. And at that point, I switched to capsules, which are a whole lot easier to manage, especially with travel. And I stuck with that dose of 50 milligrams nortriptyline for quite some time. My son had a similar experience. Given my experiences, we knew to start him on the liquid nortriptyline. He also started low. He was young at the time. I'm trying to remember when we first started trying to treat sleep dysfunction. He got MECFS when he was about 10 years old. So he was probably 11 or 12 when we started this. And like me, he took about a year very gradually going up on the dose with the liquid until we got to a point where it seemed like it was working very well for him consistently. And for him at that time, that was 40 milligrams. So that's where we both started out with liquid nortriptyline, gradually increasing the dose until we got to a point where it was consistently effective. Another option, and many of these can be used together. Another option is Trazodone. This is a favorite choice of most MECFS experts for treating sleep dysfunction because it tends to work effectively for many people, and it doesn't usually interact with other things or cause side effects. So Trazodone's a popular one. It is also an antidepressant that increases serotonin, but it's in a different class than TCAs. And I forgot to mention, there is a genetic defect in a small portion of the population that can't metabolize TCAs correctly. And one way, if you haven't had any genetic work done, one way you would know that is if you tried nortriptyline or amitriptyline at very small doses and had side effects. If that's you, then Trazodone's a great alternative. So in one study of 66 fibromyalgia patients, concluded that Trazodone markedly improved sleep quality. It's known to increase stage 3 and stage 4 deep sleep, which is just what we need. And it's the least likely sleep treatment to lose its effectiveness over time. So the one caveat is about 20% of the fibro patients in that study experienced tachycardia, racing heart, high heart rate. Now, since that is part of orthostatic intolerance for many of us, this is, of course, something to be aware of. It has not had that effect on my son and I. But if that does happen to you, try something else. TCAs and Trazodone, one other point of warning, both TCAs and Trazodone block acetylcholine, which is another hormone that, again, has many functions in the body. So some side effects of TCAs or Trazodone can be dry mouth or eyes, digestive problems, and other issues with long-term use. If that happens to you, again, trial and error, try something else. Of the three, amitriptyline, nortriptyline, and Trazodone, amitriptyline has the biggest effect in blocking acetylcholine, nortriptyline the second, and Trazodone the least. So again, this makes Trazodone a good choice to start with. Trazodone comes in 500 milligram tablets, I think, are the smallest it comes in. Many people, including myself and my son, start with cutting those in half and just taking 25 milligrams. And again, trial and error, gradually increase the dose as needed until you find what's effective for you. Typically, that is somewhere between 50 milligrams and 200 milligrams. Again, it is used in higher doses for treating depression, but generally you want to stay below 200 milligrams if you're treating sleep dysfunction. And as with nortriptyline, you would take that only at bedtime, not throughout the day. So again, quick overview of our experience. My son and I both stayed on our doses, 50 milligrams and 40 milligrams of nortriptyline, for several years. And then it wasn't feeling quite as effective anymore. We were working with an MECFS specialist by then, Dr. David Bell, who is now retired. Wonderful, wonderful doctor. And his suggestion was, he said, instead of going higher on nortriptyline, I recommend you add in something different. And that's when he recommended Trazodone. So as I said, we both started with 25 milligrams, cutting the 50 milligram tablets in half. We both ended up at 100 milligrams of Trazodone with the nortriptyline still in the mix. So my son is an adult now. He and I both take 100 milligrams of Trazodone and 50 milligrams of nortriptyline. Again, these are tiny doses compared to what is commonly prescribed for depression. And it's been, I'm trying to think, 15 years. And this combination is still working great for both of us. Well, we've been on that combination for probably 10 to 12 years. And we both sleep soundly, 9 to 11 hours a night, good, normal, refreshing sleep, and wake up feeling good. So once you find what works for you, it tends to keep working. And if not, you can add other things in. My son and I also take melatonin. So of these three first things I've discussed, we take all three of those. My son, I think, is taking about 5 to 10 milligrams of melatonin, the extended release kind. I used to take 5 milligrams and then I went down to 3 milligrams. These are just 1 milligram tablets. Earlier this year, as I was coming out of that really long, awful relapse I had, I was having trouble getting up in the morning. So I cut my dose even further. So right now I'm only taking 2 milligrams of extended release melatonin at night, along with the Trazodone and the nortriptyline. And my sleep is excellent. It is solid sleep every night, all night. I generally wake up once, maybe twice if I've had too much herbal tea before bed, but I go to the bathroom and go right back to sleep. And I don't feel like I've been sedated. It's just normal, natural sleep. Now, there are other prescription medications designed for other uses that your doctor may decide to try with you if these things don't work for you. I know some MECFS patients take Klonopin. I think that's an anti-seizure medicine. These are the ones that I'm familiar with and the ones that came up most often in the research I did. So melatonin is all about just increasing melatonin. Tricyclic antidepressants and Trazodone both focus on increasing serotonin. Alternatively, you can move up the hormone chain to increase tryptophan. This is tricky though. And remember that tryptophan converts to 5-HTP and then to serotonin. So the reason I say this is tricky, the research I did, there was a lot of conflicting advice. And bottom line is it doesn't seem like there are that many good options in this realm, but I'll explain to you what it is. Tryptophan is found in some foods, so you could increase tryptophan with your diet. However, it's most prevalent in high protein foods, which you don't necessarily want to eat right before bedtime. In fact, eating complex carbohydrates before bedtime helps increase serotonin naturally. So experts suggest taking tryptophan supplements instead, along with a carb-heavy snack before bed. Or if you want to focus on diet, you can get tryptophan from some more carb-rich foods. Asparagus, leafy greens, soybeans, sea vegetables, cauliflower, and sunflower or sesame seeds. If you're looking at supplements, start with 200 to 500 milligrams and work up as needed to as high as 1,000 or 1,500 taken before bed. So very important caveat here. Experts do not recommend supplementing with 5-HTP. Remember, that's what tryptophan converts to, because it blocks other important neurotransmitters, and thus it'll only be effective short term, and then will stop helping sleep and will start having negative effects on the rest of your body and causing side effects. Since MECFS already has neurological effects, you do not want to add to that. So again, do not try supplementing with 5-HTP. Short term might be okay, long term definitely not. It will harm you in the long run. The other caveat is do not combine tryptophan with TCAs or Trazodone or anything else that increases serotonin. Because remember, tryptophan is early in the sequence and it will help create more serotonin. You don't want to pile on a whole bunch of different things that all increase serotonin. You could end up with serotonin levels too high, something that's called serotonin syndrome. Another way to improve your sleep is to get adequate nutrients. Whatever treatments you try, remember that there are essential vitamins and minerals that feed into this hormone process. And if you don't have enough of those vitamins and minerals in your system and available, then the conversion cycle can't work. It'll get hung up. You won't end up creating enough serotonin and melatonin because your body can't get through the steps. So this includes magnesium, which many people find mildly sedating anyway. So magnesium is great for helping sleep. And now you know why it helps sleep. It feeds into this cycle of sleep hormones. However, you have to be very careful about what magnesium you buy and which forms. So the kind of magnesium that is most often sold in drugstores, grocery stores, pharmacies, even online, the cheapest forms are the most common forms, and that is magnesium oxide and magnesium citrate. However, those two forms of magnesium are also used as laxatives. If you've had to do prep for a colonoscopy, they give you magnesium citrate. So you really don't want to be taking this on a daily basis. There are other forms, and the fact that they act as laxatives means that magnesium is rushing through your digestive tract. It is not getting absorbed properly into your bloodstream where it's needed. So the kind of magnesium you do want to take, magnesium glycinate is one, very well absorbed by the body. The two that we use are magnesium malate, also very well absorbed, and magnesium L-threonate. Now the reason this brand calls their version Neuromag, the only thing in it is magnesium L-threonate, is because magnesium L-threonate is the only form of magnesium that actually crosses the blood-brain barrier and gets into your brain. And that is great for anyone that has neurological symptoms from MECFS, brain fog, cognitive dysfunction. We were caring for my father-in-law who was in his 90s and he had dementia. This was in his daily medicine boxes. So you can choose the kind of magnesium you want based on other issues you have. If you have cognitive issues or neurological issues, then this is a great one to try. Magnesium also helps with pain. So, and as I said, it helps with sleep. So we take ours before bed, and I take this one before my nap. So magnesium malate or magnesium glycinate would be a great choice if you have pain issues. Any form of magnesium will help with sleep and with pain. You want to avoid the ones that will mess up your digestive tract and get, a form that is well absorbed. Remember the other vitamins and minerals that help the sleep cycle are iron, calcium, vitamin B6, folic acid, zinc, and vitamin C. Vitamin C can also cause diarrhea, so look for liposomal vitamin C. This is also great for your immune system, so we take that every day. And to see what kinds of vitamins and minerals you should be supplementing with, you can have lab tests done. Now, those only show what's in your bloodstream, not necessarily what's getting into your cells, but they can still give you some useful information. Lab tests did show that my son and I are both very high in B6, even though we haven't taken it in years. So we avoid that. Another thing that can help with sleep in a limited way are prescription sedatives, traditionally known as sleeping pills. Sedatives are not the best choice for correcting sleep dysfunction because of what I've explained. They usually will keep you asleep, but won't necessarily improve your sleep quality. They won't give you more deep stage sleep that you're missing. In fact, older ones like Valium actually reduced deep stage sleep, just completely counterproductive to someone who's having trouble sleeping. Now, the newer ones like Ambien, Lunesta, Sonata, they do not further degrade the quality of your sleep, but they don't necessarily improve it either. But these do have a use. I get a low dose of Ambien, just 5 milligram tablets, and I cut those in half. Watch out, a lot of it contains lactose. And I use that when I'm traveling. I don't sleep as well. When I'm traveling, my regimen still helps, but I don't sleep quite as well. I sleep well in our camper. If I'm in a hotel room or someone else's guest room, especially like the first night or two, I don't sleep that well. So I'll take a half an Ambien. So it does have a place in your regimen, but it shouldn't be the primary thing you're using because it won't improve sleep quality. The other thing to use sparingly is over-the-counter sleep aids. Anything with PM in the name, those all use an antihistamine, diphenhydramine, which is the antihistamine in Benadryl. So this applies if you use Benadryl to help with sleep as well. Yes, it does make you sleepy. It is sedating. It won't improve the quality of your sleep, as we've discussed. But the other problem is that your body gets used to it. If you use it every night, it loses its effectiveness. So short-term use only. If, for instance, you have bad allergies, certainly you may need to take Benadryl periodically. If you've got an issue with temporary pain, or you don't have a prescription sedative like I do with Ambien, and you're traveling or some other circumstances where you need some help, okay. Now, if you're dealing with pain, then sure, maybe some Advil PM or Tylenol PM temporarily, but don't stay on those long term because the effects will wear off. I think I've covered our experiences. I will link to an older blog post down below that gets into our experiences in more detail and the trial and error that we went through. And I mean, bottom line is my doctor was right. Correcting sleep did help improve everything else. When combined with other treatments, like treating orthostatic intolerance and helping to normalize immune function, what I have found is that my cortisol levels have also normalized. So as I explained, melatonin and cortisol work together. So fixing sleep can help improve your cortisol production as well. The article includes a whole section on sleep hygiene, but I see that I have gone really long on this. I will include this article. Sleep hygiene just means doing all the things they tell you to do to get good sleep. Dark room, cool room, no blue light, no screens before bedtime, get plenty of daylight. That goes back to what we were talking about with melatonin and cortisol. That's why you avoid blue light at bedtime, screens, because they emit blue light that shuts off melatonin production, the last thing you want. Also, it's a great idea, first thing in the morning, as soon as you get up, open those curtains wide, get plenty of daylight. I've even started, my morning routine's getting longer and longer, but I'm just going outside for 5 or 10 minutes just to get that sunlight and help my body make more cortisol and tell it to turn off the melatonin. I am going to include the link down below to this article and also a link to my video, How to Nap, which includes lots of really great advice on how to sleep better, both during the day and at night. So take a look at that for more tips on improving your sleep through these sort of sleep hygiene approaches. MECFS and long COVID are very complicated diseases with a complex web of very intricate causes and effects involving every system in our body. When sleep is disrupted, problems will occur in the endocrine system, the immune system, the nervous system. We've already got problems in all those systems, so you don't want more. And that will worsen your MECFS in a vicious cycle. Conversely, when you treat sleep problems and correct the sleep dysfunction in MECFS and long COVID, there will be improvements in all of those systems, leading to even better quality. It's instead of the vicious cycle, you'll have a positive domino effect, leading to even better sleep, improved immune function, better endocrine function, that complex system of hormones. So the best approaches in correcting sleep dysfunction will not only help you fall asleep and stay asleep, but will actually improve the quality of your sleep so that you wake up feeling refreshed and ready for the day. That's it. I'm sorry it went so long, but this is a really important topic. If you have any questions at all, please let me know in the comments down below. I would also love to hear about your experiences, what you have tried, what's worked, what hasn't. Let me know in the comments down below.